Well, modern gaming strikes again. Recently, people were reminded, yet again, of just how awful modern gaming actually is. And it's not a joke, it's not just a meme, it's not, oh, modern gaming sucks, but it's actually not that bad. No, it is that bad. It's fucking horrible. Things were better back then. Games were better back then. It's not just nostalgia. It's not just, oh, you were younger and had less responsibilities and you missed that. No. All that's bullshit. Gaming was literally just better back then. The games were better. That's what's going on here. Modern gaming is ass. Redfall is a game that recently released, and it's buggy on PC, locked at 30 FPS on console. You have to wait till later to get the 60 FPS update. And also, bugs and performance issues aside, even when you just look at Redfall's gameplay and overall design, it doesn't seem like many people are really enjoying it. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is another game with awful performance on PC from what I've seen. There's various different bugs and glitches and players getting very low frames per second when playing on low settings and they have really good PC hardware. And there's also issues with the game on console, but it's mainly PC where the game is really hurting. And then if we go back a little bit, we had The Last of Us Part 1 PC port that got released, and that was very buggy. The Callisto Protocol had an awful launch, very, very buggy performance issues. We go back even further, we look at Halo Infinite, tons of issues, game launched incomplete. Battlefield 2042, tons of issues. Cyberpunk, Fallout 76, Anthem, No Man's Sky, MCC, horrible launch. Battlefield 4, if we go back even further. And there's various other games, right? Modern gaming is fucking awful. It really is. And I think many people are finally waking up to that. Some people are still in denial and think gaming today is not as bad as some are making it out to be. But no, it's really that fucking bad. Back in the day, we were getting complete games, good games, content-rich games, innovative games, and a lot of the games that release today are unfinished, broken, not very innovative, lacking content. It's horrible. But some people might be wondering why. Why is gaming so bad right now? And how did we get here? Well, certain people believe different things. I see a lot of people blame the higher-ups, the investors and shareholders and the suits. And, when people point the blame at them, I feel like they're doing that to kind of take some of the blame off of the developers. And, a lot of people give the developers a pass. Like, oh, it's not their fault. It's the higher ups that care about the money and release windows and stuff like that. But did the people up top didn't they always care about that? Didn't they always care about the profit? And when a game is released, even back then, like back in the day when gaming was good, the people up top, they've always cared about that. That hasn't fucking changed. So why would that be an excuse for gaming to suck now? Listen, I've seen developers of games praise their dog shit games and push back against people that are criticizing their dog shit games. So I don't excuse the developers entirely. I do feel there is a ton of blame that you can justifiably put on the developers. Again, like I mentioned, it doesn't always seem like developers are on the same page as gamers. I have seen developers praise the dog shit games that they've worked on. So it doesn't seem like all of them recognize how awful these games actually are. So that's why I don't give all the developers a pass. I know some people say, oh, don't blame the developers, not their fault, not their fault, not their fault. But when I'm seeing some of them not recognizing the glaring issues with their fucking game, and they actually push back on the people criticizing the game, then I mean, like, why the fuck would I not pin some of the blame on the developers? Listen, back in the day, when gaming was good, the people up top calling the shots, deciding when games are released, they cared about the profit then. They cared about when the game is released and how long it takes to make. Like, they cared about that then as well. And we had plenty of phenomenal games back in the day. Well, at least games much better than we're seeing today. Again, finished games, good games, content-rich games, innovative games. So that's why I don't buy the idea that it's just the people deciding when games are released, or the developers just didn't have enough time. I just don't buy that that's always the reason that these games come out unfinished and buggy nowadays. I mean, the time is there for these developers to create these games. Redfall was delayed. Starfield was delayed. And hey, that game will probably be shit too when it comes out. I mean, who knows? Maybe it won't be, but like I said, it's already been delayed. The gameplay that they showed off for the game looked really jank and framey. Also, when we just take into account all the issues with modern gaming, yeah, it's really not looking good for Starfield. Where we're at now with gaming, like, we just have to assume, like, games are going to release broken and unfinished and garbage. That has to be that should be the assumption, right? We shouldn't be surprised when a game releases unfinished and broken anymore. Not at this point. No, we should actually be surprised if a game releases finished, content rich, and innovative and all those things. That's surprising, right? You could say, well, no, we should expect games to be finished at launch. Yeah, I mean, that should be the case, but it's just not the reality we're living in. The reality we're in, gaming is just an awful spot, obviously. And listen, don't get me wrong. I understand that games have always had bugs. There's always been issues, various glitches with games. I get that. I'm just saying it's a lot worse today overall with video games. I mean, I see some people make these stupid ass fucking statements. They're like, man, if you don't want games to release until they're ready or until they're bug free, then games would never release. Bro, shut the fuck up. Many people are not saying delay games until they're perfect. No, many people are just saying don't release them as broken pieces of garbage, especially when some games are $70 now. Redfall is a $70 game. Star Wars Jedi Survivor, $70 game. The Callisto Protocol, Battlefield 2042, I believe they were $70 games on latest gen consoles. And there's various other $70 games. So, I mean, like, it's already bad enough that games are releasing as unfinished and broken as they are. But then, when you consider that some of these games are $70 now instead of $60, that just makes it even worse. And you know what tends to happen when these games release in these horrible conditions? You know, the developer will put out a statement basically saying, we'll fix it later. With Redfall, the game releases, it's $70, and you have to wait till later to get the 60 FPS update for consoles. And I think on some of the copies of Redfall, I think there's a sticker on it basically saying that the 60 FPS mode is coming later, because on the back of the case, it'll say 60 FPS for Xbox Series X consoles, but it's not there at launch. So that's a common thing now with modern gaming, where games release broken and unfinished, and they fix them later. They finish them later. One of the main reasons that developers can do this is because people still give them their money for garbage, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit later in the video. I mean, with these type of garbage practices of shipping a game and fixing it later, I mean, how about we pay for half the game up front and the rest when the game is finished? You know, how about we arrange that? Or, just don't buy the game at all because you don't want to support games releasing unfinished. Now, there's a clip I want to show you guys, and I want to address it real quick because this is something that I saw the other day. I was watching an IGN podcast with like Damon Hatfield, Ryan McCaffrey, and there's 2 others on there. And one of the guys on there, I think he's a writer at IGN, I believe. He said something that I couldn't believe. He basically tried to argue that games have always launched broken, like we see with games today, as if it's not unprecedented what we are seeing with the current state of modern gaming.
John, why don't you kick things off? It's not unheard of for games to launch in a buggy, rough state. It just seems like this is happening more and more often today.
I disagree. Okay. So the old guy is here, so I'm going to tell old man stories about the olden days. This has been the same problem for 30 years. Like, it's no worse than it's ever been. Like, there was a couple of, I was sort of like reading up and reminding myself of games that I had reviewed years ago. Wing Commander 3 came out in 1994. 30 years ago, and 2 examples of that was Wing Commander 3, and the game just would not work on the highest spec. It wasn't until a year later when the Pentium 100 shipped that the game would even run reasonably well.
Now, in that clip, he referenced some really old games. I think some games that released before I was fucking born. Listen, bro. I'm not doubting. First off, I'm not doubting that games haven't released broken before. I definitely don't doubt that games were releasing broken way, way, way back in the day. But all that aside, we got to a point where games were releasing finished, polished, with tons of content and innovation. All right, we got to that point, and we stayed at that point for a while. And then things devolved into what we see today with modern gaming, where games are releasing very broken, very unfinished. Like, man, I cannot believe that he actually tried to make that argument like it's always been this way. No, buddy, it hasn't. And even and some other people on that podcast even pushed back on that a little bit. I mean, it is just so disingenuous to act like games were always releasing this broken and it was this common. And again, you also have to consider some games are $70 now. Games are more expensive. These are and a lot of these games are AAA games with huge budgets, okay? And possibly even more development time than the games that he referenced in that clip. And I understand that games have evolved. Some games try to do things that are more ambitious. Games are more, graphically demanding now. I understand that. But, like, if you can't achieve those things, right? Like, if a game is trying to do something too ambitious, or the graphics are trying to be, they're trying to make the graphics too realistic, and the hardware can't handle it, you can't pull it off, then don't fucking do it. Oh, well, it's the gamers. They just demand so much. What the fuck are you talking about? I see so many gamers reminiscing on the past, games from decades ago, and people look back on those old-ass games as the best games. I do not believe that all these gamers are just demanding super ambitious games and have unrealistic expectations. For the most part, that is not what I'm seeing from gamers. I'm seeing gamers wish we got games today that were like old games from way back in the day. And again, that's not just nostalgia speaking. No, you can make a solid argument that a lot of these older games are so much better than the games of today. And going back to what I said about time and the idea that, games are just releasing broken now and unfinished is because developers didn't have enough time. Yeah, I also don't believe that's the case, because it's not like developers were getting so much more time to develop games back in the day than they are now. If anything, I see games in development longer today than back in the day, and the games are releasing more broken, more unfinished, less content. And I'm not saying developers should have to crunch and work insane hours like Bungie did developing Halo 2. But there's plenty of games from back in the day where developers didn't have to crunch. The game came out finished. It came out polished. Tons of content. And it was just a complete game. But again, now we see games in development for long times and they come out broken. I mean, anybody denying that modern gaming is just shit is just, they're in denial. And I know different things appeal to different people, and maybe there's some games out there that released recently that you enjoy. Okay, whatever. There's difference of opinion, sure, whatever. But I think many people would agree that gaming was much better back in the day. And it's not just like that's not just like a thought like that you can't substantiate. No, there's many reasons you could give to support that opinion that gaming used to be much better. You know, and I've talked about these things in multiple different videos now, okay? Like I can break down the games of the past and compare them to what we're getting now, and it was just easily better back then. Again, more finished, innovative games back then. And new games, right? Like, even if you think the Halo games of today, the COD games of today, the Battlefield games of today, even if you think they're like all better than those same series in the past, at least they were like new back then, right? Many people agree like the older CODs were better, older Halos were better, but not only that were they better in the past, they were also new. Like, Gears of War was new back then, 2006, I believe. Halo 3 or Halo in 2001. These were new series. You have Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, and the Fallout series. A lot of these big series that we still get games for today. Many people agree the older games were better, and they were also new back then as well. So that's another element of it too. Like, they were good and brand new. And I also wanted to mention Nazi Zombies, which was introduced in COD back in the day with World at War. I mean, that mode alone was huge. That was a massive, innovative mode. I mean, some people just play COD for zombies. And I just don't see that type of, like, innovation in games today. I mean, we had Battle Royale, but, that's something that's been around for several years now. And when Battle Royale games first started coming out, the whole game was just Battle Royale. Like, we weren't getting a campaign and like a traditional multiplayer and all these other things alongside the Battle Royale. No, like the whole game was a Battle Royale. So it's like, yeah, you could say that's innovative, but we also lost a bunch of shit. When we got Nazi Zombies in World at War, we didn't lose the single-player campaign. We didn't lose the traditional multiplayer. When we got Forge and Theater in Halo 3, we didn't lose the campaign and the traditional multiplayer and custom games. No, these were additional innovations on top of what we already love about that game, about that series. But with Battle Royales, which were definitely new and innovative, when we started getting Battle Royale games, the whole game was just Battle Royale, and we didn't get things like a campaign and a traditional multiplayer, things that we were used to in shooter games. When Call of Duty Black Ops 4 released with a Battle Royale mode, the game didn't include a campaign mode. When Respawn Entertainment released Apex Legends, which was a game based in the Titanfall universe, we didn't get a single-player campaign like we had in Titanfall 2, and there wasn't a traditional Titanfall multiplayer in Apex Legends. No, it was just a Battle Royale. So again, Battle Royale was definitely something new and innovative, but again, Battle Royale's been around for several years now, so obviously it's not as new as it once was. And also, like I explained, when we started getting Battle Royales, we didn't get all the other things that we are used to in many shooter games, like a campaign and a multiplayer and possibly a horde mode and things like that. So it was kind of like there was this give and take. It was like, yeah, here's something new, but you don't get all this other stuff. Whereas back in the day when we got a horde mode for Gears of War, that was a new mode on top of your single player and your multiplayer. Nazi zombies, that was a big new mode on top of Call of Duty's campaign and traditional multiplayer. Theater mode and Forge in Halo 3, you got that on top of campaign, custom games, traditional multiplayer. And I'm sure there's other examples out there as well. And before I conclude this video, there's a couple of tweets I wanted to highlight real quick. First one from Ryan McCaffrey at IGN, where he says, the Xbox 360 had so many great exclusive blockbuster games that literal widespread system meltdowns, the Red Ring of Death, didn't slow down console sales or people's love for the Xbox 360, even when they had to go through 3, 4, or 5 systems because of it. Think about that. Now, I don't know how true that is, that the Red Ring of Death didn't slow down sales at all. Maybe that's true, maybe that's a little hyperbolic, I don't know, but either way, the Xbox 360 was still huge. People were going through multiple consoles just to play the incredible games on that console back in the day. That's how good like gaming was back then. I don't know that everybody would be doing the same thing today. I mean, who's going through, like, if there was a Red Ring of Death for the Xbox today, how many people are going through multiple consoles to play fucking Redfall? Like, come on now. And I understand that not everyone feels that all games nowadays are bad. Like, I know the Dead Space remake or remaster, that got a lot of praise. Resident Evil 4 remake got a lot of praise. I understand that. And that's cool. But also at the same time, it's like, they're remakes or remasters of older games, right? Like, it's not a brand new series. It's not, and those games, to my knowledge, I think they're just single player. They might have an additional like side mode in the game I'm not really sure about, but like, how much replayability and longevity do games like those have? Like, people were playing old CODs, Nazi zombies for fucking years. Halo 3 for several years. Halo 3 was like a top game on Xbox Live for multiple years. Like, not only were games new back then and finished and content rich and innovative, but they had a ton of replayability and longevity. And this other tweet I wanted to look at is from Robert Bowling, who is now at Midnight Society, which is Dr. Disrespect's game studio, working on the game Dead Drop. And Robert Bowling, I'm sure many of you know, he used to be at Infinity Ward working on Call of Duty back in the day. He tweeted this. He said, "The old ways of making AAA games is dead. Stop hiding your development behind a wall for 2 to 5 years so people don't know what they're buying until it's too late. Stop relying on bullshit trailers and just release solid gameplay and playable builds. No NDAs or rules. I will continue to release ugly playable builds focused on refining gameplay from player feedback that gradually get better looking over time. It's much better than hiding the game for years while I perfect the look of it and then releasing it broken. Gameplay over hype all day." Yeah, I really liked both of those tweets, and, you know, part of what he said there is something I've thought to myself for a long time, about how developers should be more transparent and open about what they're working on, instead of hiding it for years and then releasing it, and people might not even want that. Why not be more transparent? Like, imagine this. Game developers are like, hey, what game do you want us to make? The overwhelming majority of the community wants them to make a certain type of game. They make that game. It's finished. It's polished. Is that not a win-win for fucking everybody? The consumers win. The developers win. Like, how is that not a win for everybody? How does that not make more sense than guessing what people want and just hoping that they like the game that you're working on behind closed doors for years, and then you release it. It might be broken, but it also might not even be a game that people want. I absolutely feel that transparency should be the future of game development. Pull back the curtains. Let the consumers see what you're working on. Let them provide feedback. You can make adjustments and refine things based on that feedback. It just makes so much sense. Now, some people might argue that developers, they shouldn't have to do what consumers want. They should have the freedom to create their own vision and bring that to life in a game. And I mean, yeah, sure, they don't have to listen to consumers, but again, a lot of games now are releasing broken and unfinished and flopping, and some people don't even like the vision that they had for their game. Would it not be more beneficial for developers to make the game that people want and then make more money from that game because people like it? I feel like that's the better option there, right? I feel like developers would rather release a game that is praised, that people want, make tons of money, instead of releasing the game that they genuinely want to make, their vision, but it's not necessarily what the people want, and the game kind of flops. And if developers don't have the passion or desire to create games that people want, then, I mean, what the fuck are we even doing at that point? Now, another thing I wanted to talk about, because I know I'm putting a lot of the blame on developers here, because again, I do justifiably think they hold a lot of the blame. The higher ups calling the shots, making these big decisions and deciding when games need to be released. Yeah, they can absolutely hold some of the blame too. But there's also a lot of blame that goes on the consumers who are spending money on dog shit. A lot of the blame goes on them. I've talked about microtransactions in past videos. A lot of people don't like microtransactions, and many of these people that say they don't like microtransactions spend money on microtransactions. Listen, it's simple. This is a very simple issue to solve. Simple in that it requires you to do nothing. You have to do less to solve this issue of garbage games and microtransactions. Stop spending money. Stop giving them your money. That's the solution. Now, I know it's not easy to get everyone to do that. I understand that. But when I say it's simple, I mean it in the sense that you don't have to do anything extra. You just have to do less to solve the issue. But we have to do it collectively, united. At least enough. Enough people have to, boycott. Stop spending money on garbage games, on microtransactions if you don't like them. Gamers have shown developers that they can release unfinished games and still make money. They can jam a bunch of microtransactions into games, and people will buy them. Gamers have showed developers that. So it makes sense that they keep putting microtransactions in games. It makes sense that they wouldn't mind releasing a game unfinished if tons of people are still going to buy it. If enough people stopped spending their money on this garbage, then I'm confident things would change in the gaming industry. Absolutely. I'm very confident of that. And it doesn't need to be everyone. It doesn't need to be every single person holding onto their money, not giving it to these companies. It needs to be enough people. Right? If they take a big enough hit, I am confident changes will be made. But from the perspective of a developer, like where is the real incentive to go the extra mile, go above and beyond and make really incredible games and finish games if people are still going to buy regardless? Like, where do they, I mean, how do they benefit from doing all this extra work to make great games, again, if people are just going to buy it regardless? Now, I also understand that, like, a person, somebody might buy a game that is unfinished and isn't very good, and they agree it's not very good, but they enjoy some aspects of it, and they recognize that if they don't spend money on this, nothing's going to change. They're just one person, and that person just spends money on the game just so they can enjoy parts of it, right? Even though they agree overall the game is pretty bad, they still might, buy it because they get some enjoyment out of it. Like, I get that take too. I understand that. Like, you're just one person. You not spending your money on that microtransaction or that unfinished game really isn't changing anything. I get that too. It's got to be a collective effort to really make a change here. But also, it's like, why would you... Do you really want to spend money on microtransactions if you hate microtransactions? Do you really want to give your money to somebody who just released an unfinished, broken game? I mean, I don't. Like, I barely spend money on microtransactions. I'm not buying all these games that are releasing broken. I don't buy many games. Other than... I bought a bunch of old games on sale for the winter Steam sale several months back, but these were older games that, they were on sale. They were really cheap, and a lot of those games are highly praised games too, and some of them I've played, so I know they're good games. But other than that, yeah, I don't really buy a lot of games. Don't buy a lot of new games. And even if there was a new game that I was looking forward to and it released unfinished, like, yeah, I'd be reluctant to spend money on that. I wouldn't want to spend money on it because it's an unfinished game. Even if there were aspects of it maybe I'd enjoy, I still wouldn't want to spend money on it. Now, one more thing that I wanted to include in this video, which relates to why I believe modern gaming is so fucking bad now, is cheating. There's a lot of games, online multiplayer games, that are infested with cheaters. I mean, it's like a bigger problem than it's ever been. COD has a bunch of cheaters. Apex, Destiny, Halo. I mean, Tarkov. I mean, you just pick a game. Like, cheaters are everywhere now, and it's a real problem. And there's so many different ways to cheat now. You have ESP, you have aimbot, all that type of stuff. You also have devices. You have Zims and Cronuses and strike packs and all kinds of devices that I absolutely would consider cheating. I mean, some of them have features where you can shoot faster or reload faster, reduced recoil, stuff like that, or aim assist on mouse and keyboard. I absolutely consider that shit cheating. And so just between everything, yeah, cheating is just such a big problem in gaming today. And it seems like it's hard for developers to detect all these different forms of cheating and even the anti-cheats that they have in place. There's ways that cheaters can circumvent that. I've played plenty of cheaters, like not just like accusations, but like obviously cheating. I've seen people play plenty of cheaters. I've watched videos on, the cheating problems in various different games. It's really fucking bad. Really bad. So that's kind of like killing multiplayer gaming for me. I mean, one, there's just not many games that really appeal to me now, but when you also consider how many people cheat, it's like I really don't even want to play anymore. So again, it's not just modern gaming sucks because of unfinished, broken games that aren't very good. It's also games are infested with fucking cheaters now. Gaming is in such a horrible fucking spot. So anyways, I think that's just about it. I wanted to talk about this, about the state of modern gaming, because we've had some recent games release in an awful, unfinished state. Again, if there's going to be some real change, I think you just got to hold on to your money. I mean, is it really that hard to not spend your money on garbage? Is it really that hard? I know there's some people out there that like these garbage games, but again, I think there's enough people that recognize how bad these games are, and if all of them held on to their money and didn't spend it, they could make a substantial change. But I guess some people just don't have the willpower that others do. I don't know. And again, like I mentioned, transparency, I think that's the future. We got to get away from this whole develop a game behind closed doors for several years, and then you unveil it to everybody, and many people might not even want that type of game. It doesn't interest them, and also the game release is broken and unfinished. Back in the day, it did work, where developers could work on a game behind the scenes for several years without anyone knowing what it is. It worked because the games were finished and they were good. Like but that's not the reality we're living in now. So, transparency, that's the future. And again, just people, if you want to see a change here with the awful state of gaming, I just stop spending your money on garbage. I mean, it really is just that simple. It is. Again, I'm not saying it's easy to get everyone united in not spending their money on garbage, even though it shouldn't be hard to convince people not to spend their money on garbage, but it really is just that simple, in the sense that you just have to do nothing. You have to do less to make a change by not spending money. Anyways, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.